Okay, thank you. I am calling the November 12th, 2024 Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Duggar,
I'm here.
Hartmeyer Prigg,
Here.
Hassan,
Here.
Kimmy,
Here.
Teeter,
Here.
Beatty,
Here.
Kim,
Here.
Lair,
Here.
Walton. I'll put her down as absent. And I have Counselor Tivnon as absent too.
Thank you. All right, we will be beginning tonight's meeting with the Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency Board moving into executive session in accordance with ORS 1.662 or 62H. Consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Pursuant to ORS 192.660, Section 4, it is the Bureau Board's requirement that the items discussed not be disclosed by media representatives or others. So for the board members and other staff who are attending this session, please go to the other link, and then we will come back to this link after executive session. manager, city attorney, and finance director. Okay, so you're all being added. Great. I didn't know if we needed to raise hands there too. All right. So we have returned from executive session. Is Counselor Duggar here? Yes. Okay. We're coming out of an executive session. No decisions were made during that time. And so our next agenda item is visitor comments. Visitor comments allow visitors to speak to the board about matters on tonight's agenda or any other matter they would like to talk about. Recording secretary, is there anyone here to address the Bureau Board this evening?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to board communications. Do any board members have any information they would like to share with the rest of the board and the executive director? Go ahead, Mayor Beatty.
Sorry, I've lost my mind on how to use the right now
Okay.
chat feature. It's been a minute. I'm like over here. I wanna talk to the Bureau Board about an incident that's happening around parking with the building on Broadway and the impact it's having to the brewery that's currently located there, and with Deadstock Coffee coming online. I've talked to the city management team about this, that we have the construction workers in that building that don't care about paying the tickets, that continue to park in those spots, and it's making it challenging for these small businesses to operate, particularly going into the holiday season. um I've asked the city if we could put up like no construction parking. They said that they don't think that's a good idea, but I think we need a better plan than we'll just keep ticketing them. This is unfair. I think we need to also, as a board, um, think about a policy that any building that's happening needs to come with a parking management strategy, because this is like going to continue to happen when we have minimum parking requirements, and as we're building more. I think we're going to continue to conflict, what is happening with parking and what's happening with local businesses. We've already heard a lot about the lack of parking. So what I'm asking for is, one, I'd like to direct the Bureau to go and actually create an outcome in this current crisis that we're in and not wait for a future date. We have to either talk to the general management, we need to talk to the building owner that's constructing it, or somebody. We need to come to a reasonable agreement that they cannot just keep getting parking tickets and parking here. And I'd like us to consider a future where any building that's happening needs to come with a parking management strategy so we can avoid these issues in the future. We can have these conversations when they come in for the development review.
Thank you, Mayor Brady. Please use the chat if anyone, or raise a hand, either way is fine. If you have any comments or question on I think my follow-up is with the building parking strategy. Would that be a future council conversation?
I mean, it could be, if we're talking about outside of Bureau. I mean, we're going to have a future issue with Cooper Mountain and the development that's happening there, but like we're not facing this in any part of the city besides Bureau at the particular moment. So that's why I felt like this might be the board to address it right
Yeah.
now, and then maybe think about it as a council in the future.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I definitely would be interested. We've got a couple different pockets in Bureau that I think it's especially been challenging, and it's really disappointing to hear that they're just parking and staying and getting tickets and not, those are teeny tiny businesses that need that foot traffic that need the parking. So I would definitely be open to considering what we can do. Policy wise, yes. In the like, how do we get involved now? I don't know, but I'm definitely open. If the Bureau Board can do something, I would be supportive of doing something. Any other thoughts? Thank you. Councillor Teeter, then Councillor Husson.
Okay, I'm just chiming in because I don't want it to feel like this is dying because of lack of interest. I support it, and I think it is something we need to address. And so I would entrust staff with some of the creativity with how we do that, whether it is no parking for construction workers, however that should be phrased. I would support us going in this direction. So thank you for bringing this up, Mayor.
Yeah, can you elaborate? Are you saying that folks are parking like construction folks are parking in business spots. I want to be careful of like what's in our, like what we can support and what we can't support. So if you could just elaborate, I understand like the concept of a parking strategy and really starting to think through how we support our local businesses. I think wayfinding, which won't happen tomorrow, and that stuff will be helpful. But if you can just expand on like what exact that part, because I was trying to kind of catch
Construction
up.
workers are parking in 2-hour parking that's designed for customers and getting ticketed and just paying the ticket and staying there because it's cheaper for them to do that than like try to move their tools somewhere else. But they're holding those spots a lot, and we're using the parking enforcement that we already have. They're going and ticketing them, but they simply don't. They're just using it as a business expense, I'm guessing.
So they're parking for like 8, 10 hours a day.
Yes.
Have we tried talking to the construct like
We've tried all those things, and it's not our job to do that. That's why we need to direct the city manager to do it.
so I guess has staff talked to them? Jenny is raising her hand. So go ahead, Jenny.
So just to clarify, and staff can jump in. So we do ask that a parking plan is provided. However, we don't have a requirement. And so I think where the mayor's going is that we would like to make it a requirement and then have some incentives to make sure that they actually implement said plan. And so that's what we're missing right now. So I believe that's where the mayor's going with her request. Andy or Dan can kind of fill in any blanks that I left, but we do ask, but we don't have a requirement tool. And this would help correct that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I could support the parking strategy piece of this. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. Thanks, Ginny. I talked to our planning manager today to see if a parking management plan could even be a condition of approval, and she thinks that may be a stretch. But between that, we have a few different levers where applicants will need land use approval, they need site development approval to do improvements in the right of way. They'll need a building permit. So we're going to start exploring some of the things that we could do to actually have some teeth in enforcing this mechanism. We also have a few folks from CDD, site development, economic development, building department, code compliance. They're going to be going out on site this week and talking to some folks there, the construction manager, as well as talking to the affected businesses too, to try to make sure our relationships don't go south there and see if we can find some resolution. But to Bureau member Teeter's suggestion that staff try to be creative here, that's what we'll be doing this week.
Well, and Andy, I want to be clear that I don't think you need to go out and talk this to death. This is an ongoing issue that your team is well aware of. And so asking the business owners if they continue to be impacted by this decision seems like a waste of a few days when they are telling us exactly this is how it came. It came to me, it came to Kevin, it came to a lot of other members. Downtown Association has tried. You have sent your own staff in there and trying. Sometimes subcontractors don't care about the impact they're leaving on the community. So I think you need to go to the developer that wants to develop in the Beaverton in the future and put some pressure on them to get their subcontractors in line, because this, the strategy that you're doing right now isn't working. And what you're suggesting is the same thing you've been doing.
Oh, okay. Duly noted. Getting my history lesson. There was another project, Northwest Natural was doing a capital improvement project on that street too, that should be wrapping up here shortly. And they were doing some of the road work on that last week. So there was that. And I also I don't want a business to get an impression that we're ignoring their demands. So I certainly understand what you're saying, Mayor, but just pointing that out too, that we want to make sure that we let them know that they're being heard as we try to work through this. Yeah, that's all I have to say. We'll definitely have code compliance making regular sweeps through there as well to make sure that things are looking a little bit better. But yeah, we may need alternative approaches. I hear you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we've got board member Walton and then board member Kinney.
Yeah, I'm just curious, if a private lot has the ability to put up if you're against this, we will tow you, could we not do that? If they're not paying the tickets, could we be like, if you're extended in this spot past a period of time, you will get towed to change the behavior?
Can staff
anyone?
answer?
I'm not sure I'm the best to answer this, but I'll give it a shot. And really, because it is a public right of way, public street, we don't have that in our escalation, for something like this. I think, what's happening is they're paying off the ticket. And so often what happens when we would tow someone is that they have accumulated unpaid tickets. And so that's at least what we're hearing is that it's repeated behavior, but they're paying off the ticket. So it kind of changes that option for us.
Could we change the parking? So like we own that, right? Like the city or some combination. We talk about parking enough. But like could we change it so that if you have any number of parking tickets that the next time you get towed versus that you have an unpaid parking ticket? Like could we just change the language?
I would just say that's a pretty slippery slope, because, we're trying to deal with behavior in one area. We're probably going to create problems with folks in another area. I mean, I think I appreciate the problem solving. I think there's probably other ways. And I think the parking management strategy, we ask for that in the front end on the development. We don't always get it. We often do. And, the folks that have been doing this construction actually were parking another location, and we've seen behaviors change over the course of the development. And I think a lot of that is due to the trades transitioning as you transition through the project and translating information. And so I do think that idea of going and talking to the developer can help because the information is not being translated. It may not be the one and only thing that would help, but ultimately we have seen compliance often for a period of time. And then I think this Northwest Natural line has exacerbated the issue.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sad to hear this because I feel like those buildings have been harder for us to keep the tenants in. And so I feel like anything we can do to make sure that we support those businesses would be important. I know you guys are on it. Just want to reiterate support for them.
Go ahead, Director Kimmy.
Yeah, so I do want to support what Mayor's trying to go, but I have another question where there's a construction that's happening across from my building, but they actually block off about 3 parking spots and says it's a construction parking only. So are they even allowed to do that? Do we permit it? Is there any control over it? That was my question because I don't want other residents to suffer. And they put their own sign there, but I don't know if we all even allow that to happen. Can anybody answer that?
I think we'd have to look into the details of that one. It doesn't sound like something we would allow, but I think that's one of those times where people are potentially taking some liberties and we can go and enforce, but
okay, I'll talk to you like tomorrow or something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Director Lair?
I think this is a question for staff because first off, I'm fully supportive of this. I mean, that's that we have to protect the businesses in the area. This isn't okay, but it'd be helpful for me to understand what tools the city actually does have, because I think what I've heard is we can make them do a parking plan, but they don't have to do it. And if they do it, do they even have to follow it? I mean, these guys are already essentially flouting the rules because it's easier and cheaper to do that than to follow them. So what steps can the city take that actually would have teeth in this situation?
Can anyone on staff answer that now or get back to us on it?
I myself am not going to give a definitive answer tonight as I'm still learning all of our parking management program and enforcement. This could either be a question that we could follow up with through our compliance program, or I'd be happy to see if the city attorney has any recommendations here on what the escalation techniques are, but otherwise we can get back to you on that.
That sounds good. I know I'm trying to pull up the last parking agenda bill because we talked about it, I think in September. So I want to pull that up because I'm wondering if our escalation needs to be higher, at least on the fines, right? Because I know we had like a graduated thing, like you could start getting penalized higher the more infractions you had. And so it seems like in this case too, maybe we should revise that and make it not cheaper to pay the fine in this case. Director Duggar.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be one of my points. A couple things. I brought this up a couple months ago. This has been a problem for a while. I brought it up to staff in my one-on-one. I do think there's a supply and demand problem, and I think a lot of our conversations have been talking about demand management. And I think there's an opportunity. I go back to our conversation a month ago when we got the presentation from the parking manager, and maybe this is an opportunity for us to pilot something. Here's something along these lines, right? There's that old Nature's Market that closed, where the construction folks largely park during the day, or at least that's the bulk of where they're supposed to be parking, according to the folks I'm talking to. But in the evenings, that is largely empty. And is there an opportunity for us to maybe approach the owner of that building and make some of that parking available for our small businesses, which is, like the binaries of the world and those folks? Can we manage some to pilot, right? Like from our conversation last week or last month when we were talking about some of these private lots, like incentivizing, and maybe there's something we can do to pay or cover liability or things like that. That might be an opportunity for us to pilot something pretty quickly. It just can't take months. Like, we have to do it really quickly. These businesses are suffering. They have been for a while. Like I said, I've had these conversations months ago. I'm glad the mayor brought it up. Like these businesses are on the verge of something bad happening if we don't do something quickly. And we got to be really creative here, really quick. Like, we cannot talk this one to death. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so there's pretty strong support from the Bureau board to take action on this. I think I heard a couple actions of finding out whether it's from city attorney's office or even just like within our code compliance, what tools do we have at our disposal aside from fining? It sounds like the planning team, the development team, is going to reach out to the developer themselves and see if we can't help remedy some of it as well, and come back with also any other options. And then in addition to this immediate need of really making sure we're taking care of our businesses within Bureau, we do need to consider a policy that no longer allows parking management strategies to be optional, that they would become required, and figuring out that co-management. How will we ensure that they execute and follow their own parking management strategy going forward? I hope that recapped it well. I think we've given clear direction, but Dan, Andy, Jenny, anything else that would be helpful to clarify on this topic?
No, I think that this sounds great. I appreciate your summary, and we'll try to loop back with some information after we reach out.
Okay. Thank you all. I hope I caught the recap. So please raise your hand if I missed something. Okay, so are there any further board communications today? Okay, thank you so much for the hearty discussion on that one. Next up, we will move to the consent agenda portion. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes on consideration tonight, April 23rd, 2024 and June 4th, 2024. And then we have 1 consent agenda item, Bureau Bill 2487. I will add that Councilor Teed and I both sent in just a couple minor like typographical type corrections. They were kind of scrivener's error type corrections to the minutes. So just wanted to make sure everyone is aware. But with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we pass the consent agenda with the minor edits to whatever you just said.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved by Mayor Beatty, seconded by Councilor Duggar to approve the consent agenda. Are there any debate or discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the recorder please take the vote by roll call?
Board Member Walton?
Yes.
Thank you. Lair?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Beatty?
Yes.
Teeter?
Yes.
Kimmy?
Yes.
Hassan?
Yes.
Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Duggar?
Yes.
And I have that Counselor Tivnon is absent. A motion passes.
Thank you. All right. The next agenda item is moving into the business section of our agenda. So tonight we have Bureau Bill 2024-88, Lombard West redevelopment update. So staff will provide a presentation updating our board on the Bureau-owned Lombard West property and the future development solicitation. So Liz and team, please introduce yourself for who's ever sharing with us this evening.
Thank you. This is Liz Jones, project manager in our community development department. And tonight we have a presentation for you that Javier is going to actually be running because my lights have been flickering on and off. So in the case that my power would go out, we'd be at least able to still present. So while he pulls that up for you, I wanted to give this opportunity to thank a few members of the staff team, acknowledging that they're here tonight and they've been a huge support for this project in the early stages, and that's Jean Garcia Chitwood, Javier Mina, Jeannie Lambert, and Tyler Ryerson. And so tonight we're here to provide you an update on the Lombard West redevelopment site and our foundational efforts to prepare for the future request for qualifications to select a development partner for the site. Next slide. To orient ourselves, Lombard West is a large empty flat site centrally located in downtown. As you all know, it's been in the Bureau portfolio since 2021 when Bureau purchased it for $2.83 million. The site is across from the busiest transit center in the system, and which is a major transportation hub served by several bus and rail lines, the red line, the blue line. So it offers service between, of course, Hillsborough, Portland, Gresham, and the airport, and to Wilsonville via west. The site has really good pedestrian and bike access with bike lanes along Lombard Avenue and the Crescent Connection Trail, which borders the site along the southern edge, creating a really valuable link for bikes and pedestrians between the Beaverton Transit Center, the Round, and the Beaverton Central Station. The site is zoned Regional Center Beaverton Central, which is a very flexible zoning district that supports transit and pedestrian-oriented high-density mixed-use development. In 2023, Bureau adopted the Bureau Portfolio Redevelopment Strategy intended to provide real high-level guidance for the disposition and redevelopment of the Bureau's properties. And strategy identified this site, Lombard West, as one of the very first properties that would be offered for redevelopment as it's fairly development ready. The strategy established a vision for this property of a high-rise transit-oriented development that leverages the prior public investments of the regional transit system. The primary objective for this site really is to maximize density at Lombard West, and the strategy specifically called for the creation of a community of mixed income housing, both market rate and regulated affordable. In addition, several additional community benefits were recommended to be encouraged, such as the public open space, which I know I'm thinking of could be a potential unifier for this community. Also, active ground floor uses, green building techniques like cross-laminated timber. So earlier this year, Bureau was awarded a flexible reimbursable grant award of $500,000, which is intended for pre-development activities specifically to support the Lombard West site. Metro and Bureau entered into an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, that guides us how to use the grant dollars. And this slide illustrates the general plan for how the funds are to be deployed, which will likely be refined a little bit as we are more informed during the various due diligence stages of the project. As you can see here, the IGA outlines that the funds are going to be deployed in phases, some before the developer selection, which is the stage we're in now, during the developer selection process, and then the bulk of the funds would be reserved for after the developer is selected. While the strategy established that the site is largely development ready, there is still some early due diligence to conduct that we think will help position the site for maximum investment and community benefit. During this phase, we have begun this work. We've entered into a contract with Unite Oregon, who will be assisting us with the community engagement component. And to date, Unite has researched past efforts of past city and bureau projects and identified gaps where we should be focusing our Lombard West engagement. They've assisted us with developing an engagement plan, and they've established a real diverse community-focused group to advise on the project. Javier will go into more specifics later in the presentation, so I won't get any deeper into that. Let's see, specific site work, which is supported by the grant during this phase, has included a variety of different subject areas. Environmental, and this work was to address management of the soils containing hazardous substances that are existing on the property that exceed the levels for clean fill and construction debris fill. So in other words, if the dirt has to be removed from the site, it's going to cost the developer potentially more money to remove these soils. So we're really trying to figure out, trying to help quantify that so that we can help provide a little more certainty. Also, natural resource assessment. This is to determine if any natural resource constraints like wetlands or floodplains exist on the site. In this case, a delineation report was prepared and submitted to DSL, the Department of State Lands, and they provided their agreement with the report that no jurisdictional wetlands exist on the site. In regards to the floodplain, there is some floodplain existing along the southwestern edge of the site, and we still are learning about the potential implications. And I understand there's a work session perhaps next week on the subject. So we're working closely with staff and trying to understand that issue more as well. Regarding the other component on the site right now that we're working on is groundwater monitoring. We're trying to determine exactly how deep the groundwater is from the top of the soil. And that monitoring is going to actually happen for a year, so we can determine the low point and the high point. And the effort just began, so we were able to capture the low point before the rain started. And the low point that they showed is that that depth is between 7 and 11 feet below the ground surface. So later phase due diligence that could be done would include financial underwriting of the RFQ responses, and after a developer team is selected, could include things like additional natural resource assessment, schematic design, preliminary storm reports, additional geotech reports. And then lastly, during this phase, next slide, we conducted developer interviews. So as part of this early work, we met with a variety of developers to learn more about the current market conditions and get their thoughts on the site. This slide offers a sampling of the comments that we heard during those meetings, among which, let's see, we heard that the current real estate market is challenging, but yet folks were optimistic that it would improve in a couple of years and hopefully by the time the project could break ground, and that the central location has really great access to transit, which is overall an asset to the site. Yet there's also caution that being close to transit, there will likely have additional security needs that operators should at least consider when programming and doing the pro forma. So they factor that in, those additional costs. Additionally, parking, although you're next to transit, it's still tricky because it's still going to be needed and takes up valuable land and it's expensive to build. And they acknowledge that while close to the round, there hasn't been the same redevelopment activity in that immediate vicinity yet. So overall, though, they're really optimistic about this redevelopment opportunity. They think it's going to be really catalytic for the neighborhood, and as well as the future Milliken Extension project, if it were to be extended to Lombard, they feel that would really assist too. So overall, really optimistic. Javier, is there anything you'd like to add that I am missing?
Thank you, Liz. Just for the record, Javier Mena, Affordable Housing Manager for the City of Portland, Beaverton. I apologize. The only thing I would add is that, the project or code calls for a mixed-use commercial space on the ground floor, and that definitely developers voice a concern about the feasibility of commercial space at this point on that on that parcel. And as Liz mentioned, there's a lot of concerns with parking and especially for the commercial uses. So that's something that definitely we want to make sure that we point that out, and it'll be a challenge when that does come to fruition. And in terms of there you go. Our community engagement and our partnership with Unite Oregon, that was a key component of the Metro grant. And this is the idea is that this partnership with Unite would go through at least through the developer selection and part of working with the developer on the ongoing community engagement, so that those that have been connected with the project at this early phase can go through that process and see the project move forward. It's not to say that this is the only opportunity for the community to engage the project. The Unite Oregon component is really focused on communities of color, marginalized communities, and engaging, being more proactive in that process. And as Liz mentioned earlier, that the contract or the agreement with Unite Oregon included three components. One is their analysis of our community engagement and reports that we have done over the past few years. There's been a lot of it. And so wanted them to not start from scratch, but know what we've done and have some continuity from that process. And then, identify, if any, what gaps do we have on that engagement and how to address those things. So they've done some of that. We'll get a report in a month or so as to what the ultimate outcome is of that analysis. They're also, the idea is to establish this focus group that will really be part of this moving process, a focus advisory group that will be part of this process as we go through the selection process and working with a proposed developer when that comes to place. And the last thing that will definitely be part of it is, beyond the focus group, it is continuously engage the community in conversations about this project as we move forward. So as part of that, we have had, Unite Oregon, I should say, has had 3 community engagement sessions over the past month and a half. And they have been small overall. There's been 21 attendees to all 3 of them combined. But it's a great mix of people in terms of diversity of ethnicity and gender. I think that there's been a couple of people that have actually come to a couple of the meetings just because they feel very interested and there's ideas that they think of that they didn't say at the first meeting or at one of the meetings they attended and came back. And so I think that there's excitement in having these conversations. And so really appreciative of the work that Unite has done through this process thus far. Some of the common themes that, as you see there, and there's many common themes beyond these 3. It's just, the last thing we want to do is populate the slide with a lot of words. But definitely it has to do about community. And there's a concern about a mixed-use project that could potentially be 2 separate buildings. And if that's the case, how do you create community in that area? How do you engage not only the market rate, but the affordable in creating that? And how do you make best use of the open space as a unifier type of component? There were definitely ideas in terms of the ground floor use that could lead to employment and training, some of those things. There's amenities that definitely on both, I think the regulated and affordable should have in order to provide this inclusivity component that they should look and feel, although they're servicing different populations, kind of the same, again, complementary of each other, not the same, but complementary. And obviously there's always concern with parking, with security and safety, so addressing some of those things. So again, this is very early on process of the project as we begin to draft our solicitation process. And so Then we're going to kind of the next steps. We continue to do the due diligence. We will begin drafting the early solicitation that we hope. Our goal is to come back to Bureau with a draft for the board to review and provide feedback, and so that we can eventually release sometime in early 2025, either January, February, first quarter. And that's it.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Javier. Are there any questions or comments for our presenters this evening? Board members Duggar, then Teeter, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the presentation, and I'll be honest, I'm a little frustrated. I don't know if anyone else is. Like, this is just taking forever. Like, and maybe there's reasons for that, but I mean, it sounds like we're not even going to break ground for another couple years. And at this point, this has been off the tax rolls because Beaverton owns it, you know, since 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. And, you know, the community is desperate for affordable housing. I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary there. We've got a governor that is pushing us hard to develop properties. I don't know that we need to continue to talk about this. I think we've got to figure out a way to get shovels turning, and whatever we need to do to speed that up is my vote, because maybe I'm alone. Maybe I'm the only one getting frustrated by the length of time that we engage with. Don't get me wrong, we need public engagement. We all need this, but we don't need stuff to the point where it's like slowing us down, because the communities that I speak with need the housing more than they need to talk about it further. And I think we've got to figure this out, because this is incredibly it's taking way too long. And I appreciate all the update and the information. I don't know how to make it faster, but I'm in support of whatever we can do to get this housing built, because these communities are suffering right now, and we've got to figure this out.
Thank you for that comment. We would like it to go faster too, and we will do what we can. It's a very needed.
Well, I mean, we have to be real about that, though. There's things that we're maybe doing that aren't required, like 100% required, that we've got to like ask ourselves, is the value of one more opinion or this group of opinions more than actually serving those people? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not technical enough to know that. You guys are the experts. I'm just saying, as a voting member of this board, my preference is to move faster to action rather than talking, and more feedback and more discussion.
Just a quick point of clarification, Councilor Digger. I completely agree with you, and I think I share what Liz mentioned in terms of our sharing the frustration. I would just clarify that the community engagement is not leading how quickly or not quickly we develop the solicitation. Actually, that's irrelevant. It's really some of the other work, because the community engagement, we can definitely adjust as needed. I just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, just to, even expand on that, the community engagement, what I found really interesting, not being an expert in that subject, more of a generalist, was that when Unite did look through the past efforts, I mean, Beaverton has done a very robust, very good job with some of our more recent project efforts. So there was really a lot there for them to be able to rely on. So this effort that they're doing for Lombard West is very targeted and very specific to the project only. And they've been, once we got them on contract, they've been extremely diligent and really, working as quickly as they can while still providing thoughtful engagement. That's the other piece, because we still need to give the community time to be able to, participate with their busy schedules. But I hear you, and I appreciate the feedback.
Board Member Teeter.
Thank you, Liz and Javier. Got two questions. The first one, Javier, you were mentioning that from conversations with developers, there might be a lower interest in commercial frontage or an inclusion of a commercial element, potentially based off of lack of business viability there, I'm assuming. You were mentioning this, and I thought of the downtown design code. And so I looked back, there's an active frontage map that's part of the downtown design code, and it references this property. It basically says that a portion of like this zone in the downtown design code must be dedicated for commercial frontage. It's like half of the property and then 60% of that. And there's a little bit of math to it. Is that something that is that a code element that we would have to change if we were going to take out the commercial element, or how does this interact with the downtown design code?
That's a great question. And we're also working with our partners in CDD to, hone in on that more. I personally haven't seen a project go through with this new design code. I don't believe. I know active ground floor uses have sometimes looked like community spaces or more service fronting spaces. So I think while the current market might be a little harder for some type of retail establishment or commercial establishments, it still could be a really viable, great location for other type of more non-residential uses. And the code will definitely require that, as you pointed out.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's a good distinction for me. I read active and I was thinking commercial, but yeah, recreational or other meeting spaces or things like that. Okay. Then the second comment was related to Javier. You're also talking about how can community spaces kind of pull together elements if there are two buildings, or two different buildings on the project. First, are we looking at multiple buildings or one building? And then second point to this was referencing Roy's work over at La Scala in Barcelona, down off of Lombard, as a somewhat similar example of two different buildings, one of affordable housing, one of commercial spaces and market rate housing.
Yeah, I don't think, thank you for the question, and it's very legitimate, and that's a lot of the people that were participating in the engagement really were concerned about that. We're not prescribing the design. Just knowing from the realities of what affordable housing will fund versus other funds, we may get that, but we're not going out and saying we want to see two buildings. So that's that would be my response.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's all I had.
Thank you. Let's go to Board Member Husson.
Yeah, I wasn't going to chime in, but I thought I might as well say the things I want to say. Thank you both for the presentation. I think you've heard this from me before. Like, I'm always a big fan of the mixed use concept and what we can do with those, whether it's main floor, whether it's commercial use. I dreamed of childcare. I acknowledge that you're the expert, so I'm just going to let you decide. But another thing that came to my mind that I've been hearing from folks in the community is like bringing back like a night market type concept. And so is there a ground floor night market activation type economic development opportunity kind of related to that? I know we have a long way to go, but I just wanted to drop those thoughts and ideas to you. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
Board Member Laird.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Board Member Duggar's question. You mentioned that it's not the community engagement that's taking a long time. It's other aspects of the work. Can you elaborate? Like, what is taking so long with the development?
Definitely. I think that it has to do with our due diligence in terms of getting contractors to work on some of the site work and our procurement processes that, I think some of it has done with that. And also it is having this kind of conversations in order to have a better direction on how to proceed with a potential draft. But a lot of it has to be with selecting a contractor to be able to do some of that work.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, backing up, it was wonderful that we were awarded the Metro grant, and then that required the IGA as well as additional contractual agreements and such to be put in place. And then, prior to executing agreements and contracts for this due diligence work, you get Metro's sign off. So just a little different process that we've been navigating with this one that's contributed partially.
Got it. Yeah, and all that makes sense, and it's all, of course, very important stuff. I guess the comment I would make is that, it's been mentioned, but we have a housing crisis in the city. It's extremely important that we get housing built as quickly as possible. So we have to take all the necessary steps. It sounds like you're taking all the necessary steps. I just hope we're not wasting a lot of time debating the specific details. How are we going to do the mixed use? How are we going to have open spaces and all that when again we are in crisis? It's not that these things aren't important, but we've got a fire in the kitchen right now. We don't need to make sure that the fridge door is closed. But that's my only comment.
Great analogy. Thank you. Mayor Beatty?
Thank you. I won't go over too many points that have already been made tonight, but I think I have been thinking a lot about when we redeveloped our code to do retail or usage on the bottom and how that's led to a lot of inactivity in our downtown core and how challenging it is to program some of these spaces. I mean, we're experiencing that with our own parking garage right now, and it's hard to get people in there to do that. And I think about the Marianne and the room we forced them to build that's hardly ever used, and it could have been another unit of housing. And I know it's a little bit different with affordable housing because of what we have to comply with, David's bacon and prevailing wage in the building. And so when we make a building like affordable housing, they don't pay prevailing wage, but if they put retail on the bottom, it triggers it for the entire building, and it makes the cost of the building go up exponentially. And so a lot of developers do what they did at the Marianne, which was build a room to comply with our code on having, front retail space, but it's a room that's like hardly ever used. I mean, we've booked it a few times at the city, but a family could be living in there in this crisis. So as much as we're dreaming about what we might want there to be in the future, I would heavily focus on more housing and less of the retail space. We already know small businesses are hard. We already know some of these spaces are challenging to program, and we're seeing it across many of the buildings we've already built.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That's good feedback.
Real quick is that on the affordable, at least on the affordable housing side, because we're looking at going beyond 5 stories, really maximize density, it will be a Davis-Bacon project.
Yeah, that's true. And it reminds me too of what was done across the street from the Marianne by the Rimbolds when they did live work on the ground floor. So while I think those spaces, I'm not sure how effectively leased they were, and that's how that's really worked for them. But that was one way they were able to achieve some ground floor units as well as some activation for those who chose to do businesses out of them. So they provided for a little more flexibility and weren't vacant.
Well, I hope as we're doing this exploratory work, we go to the buildings we've already built and ask those questions. And
well, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't think we have to wonder. I think you guys have the smarts to do it.
For those of us that don't know what Davis-Bacon means, can someone give us the
prevailing wage?
Oh, it's just okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, and Board Member Kim.
Yes. I hear Councilor Douglas' comment about the urgency, and I think Eric talked about it as well. I think part of it is certainly having, obviously from my point of view, the faster the city goes, the better. Everything seems to take forever. However, I appreciate, I'm always surprised at how long everything takes. There are processes, there are so many risks of a site that those all have to be looked at by a number of different people. And it just, I think it takes a lot longer than what we hope. And all we can do is for the city staff to put a priority on trying to get it quickly, but it does take a long time, I think, to go through these processes. And I'm excited that we're at this point. One comment I wanted to make was, it's an interesting site for no other, for a reason that it is next to the transit center. There are not that many sites on transit center that and you want to basically take advantage of the investment that's made with the transit. So you're trying to maximize density and everything. in the current environment, it is just the developer's not going to have incentive to do a lot of things that we want to see there: maximize density, public space, green building. All these things are going to add cost that the developer's not maybe not able to provide because of the return that's needed by the investor. So, and especially with the higher interest rate and with a thought that it might last, higher interest rate might last a while, then developers don't want to not develop because of that. So they're going to try to squeeze it in. So I think the Bureau board might have to think about providing money incentive if we want development. Once we'll know better once development proposals come in. But if we get a proposal and we need to push the developer to increase, go another 2 floors, maybe do a mass timber building, or other things, certainly it probably doesn't make sense to have more and more commercial space, as we talked about. But if there are certain things that we want to see, that we might have to provide them financial incentive to do that. And so that's a decision that we'll have to make. So that's the one comment I had. Financially, it's just developers are not going to be able to do it without financial incentive.
Thank you, Board Member Kim. I also cannot help but think about our ground floor retail, at the garage right now that we're having a hard time getting leased. And also Bureau, like if our goal of Bureau is to increase revenue, increase the tax base and whatnot, then the mixed use is required, right? Like we can't just do a housing development. So I think for me, the priority is just kind of finding out for whatever that mixed use is, what would be like the best kind of ROI and what would, what type of use for that ground floor activation would kind of meet the moment that we're in, knowing that, some of the other spaces are not really coming together. But I agree that as fast as we can go, it's great. And I appreciate all the work that's being done. And I know that, when we get the benefit of things like these grants, then there are some things that have to slow down because we have to go through the process and make sure that we have the appropriate level of transparency and whatnot. So I'm really grateful to see the work that's been done, and I'm excited to see that parcel transform, because I think it can be kind of like a statement, right? Like knowing that that's such a high usage entry into the city with the transit. So yeah. Javier, Liz, is there anything else that the board can kind of help give feedback on, or do you feel like you got some good direction and input from us?
That's great input, and hopefully we'll see you in January with a draft.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and our last agenda item this evening then is the Executive Director's Report. Andy, do you have anything for us tonight?
No, I think we're running up against the time crunch. So the only thing I would mention is shelter grand opening is next week, the 18th. That is in the Bureau area. And I'll just leave it at that so we can proceed.
Okay. Thank you. And then Tyler, I've got a note that you might have a note for us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is Mr. Roy Kim's last Bureau meeting. Roy has been not only a member for URAC and for Bureau for many, many years, became a Bureau member back in 2018. Roy, along with Community Partners for Affordable Housing, as Councilor Teeter noted earlier tonight, were the first team to actually take a chance on our downtown over at the La Scala, Barcelona, is what SIPA had put together at that block. And without Roy as a developer and having his developer lens, these evenings, like we just had this discussion, it's been without his expertise, we could be going in different directions. Roy, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you have brought to not only this board, but also to the RESER and your participation there on your own time. The Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce Board. You started up the Suburban Product Council for Urban Land Institute that Beaverton has been a member over the years, the last couple of years. And you've worked tirelessly up in Bethany at Bethany Village. And if anyone has ever gone up to Bethany, that's because of Mr. Kim. Downtown Rockwood is another big project that your company has been instrumental on, of taking a leap of faith in an area that others may not have. And also congratulations to you and your team on the work that you're doing over in the Port of Washougal. And that should be starting, I think you may even broke ground, but hopefully that opens up very soon. As a token of appreciation, I'll be stopping by and saying hi to you in your office here likely this week. So thank you, Roy. Been great memories, and I really appreciate all you've done for us here at the City of Beaverton.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Roy. What a great list of activities too, and to see kind of your thumbprint. And I also have learned so much in getting to be exposed to you on this board. So thank you. We will miss you. That concludes our Bureau meeting this evening. So thank you, Roy. Thank you to our staff and our presenters this evening. We will hop over to the council meeting.